In the bustling city of Lagos, Nigeria, 70-year-old Aduni Adeyemi sat in her living room, surrounded by the constant hum of traffic and the chatter of neighbors. Her wrinkled hands rested on her swollen belly, a sight that had become the talk of Surulere, her neighborhood. Aduni had spent her entire life longing for a child. She had married young, at 18, to Biodun Adeyemi, a promising banker. They had tried everything: traditional herbs, prayers, pilgrimages to holy sites, and even expensive fertility treatments abroad. Nothing worked. As the years passed, Biodun grew distant, eventually leaving Aduni for a younger woman who bore him 3 children in quick succession. Alone and childless at 60, Aduni had resigned herself to a life of loneliness. That is, until she met Mama Iyabo, the mysterious new tenant in the flat next door. Mama Iyabo, with her dark, penetrating eyes and knowing smile, had promised Aduni the impossible, a child of her own. "But I'm too old," Aduni had protested. Mama Iyabo had merely chuckled. "Age is but a number, my dear. With the right assistance, anything is possible." Now, 10 years later, Aduni's wildest dream had come true. She was pregnant at 70, a medical miracle that had doctors scratching their heads and neighbors whispering behind closed doors. But as her due date approached, Aduni couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. It started with the dreams. Every night, Aduni found herself in a dark forest, the air thick with the scent of rotting vegetation. In the distance, she could hear a baby crying, its wails growing louder and more desperate with each passing moment. But no matter how fast she ran, she could never reach the child. Then came the cravings. At first they were manageable: spicy pepper soup at odd hours, unripe mangoes dipped in palm oil. But as her pregnancy progressed, Aduni found herself craving things that made her stomach churn: raw meat, soil from the backyard, even the blood of small animals. Concerned neighbors tried to intervene, but Aduni brushed off their worries. "It's just pregnancy hormones," she'd say with a forced smile. But deep down, she knew something was terribly wrong. As her due date approached, strange things began happening in the neighborhood. Pets disappeared without a trace. Children reported seeing a dark figure lurking in the shadows. And every night the sound of a baby crying echoed through the streets, though no one could pinpoint its source. One evening, as Aduni sat on her veranda, rubbing her swollen belly, she spotted Mama Iyabo watching her from across the street. The old woman's eyes gleamed with an unnatural light, and for a moment, Aduni could have sworn she saw sharp teeth peeking out from behind her neighbor's smile. "Soon, my dear," Mama Iyabo called out. "Soon your greatest wish will be fulfilled." A chill ran down Aduni's spine and she hurried inside, locking the door behind her. That night, as Aduni tossed and turned in bed, she felt a sharp pain in her abdomen. "It's time," she whispered to herself, a mixture of excitement and dread washing over her. She reached for her phone to call a taxi, but the screen remained dark. The power was out, a common occurrence in Lagos, but the timing couldn't have been worse. Aduni stumbled to her feet, planning to ask a neighbor for help, when she heard a soft knock at the door. "Who's there?" she called out, her voice trembling. "It's me, dear," came Mama Iyabo's silky voice. "I've come to help with the delivery." Relief flooded through Aduni, and she quickly opened the door. But the figure that stepped inside wasn't the Mama Iyabo she knew. This creature was tall and gaunt, with elongated limbs and skin that seemed to shimmer in the darkness. Its eyes glowed an eerie red, and its mouth was filled with rows of razor-sharp teeth. Aduni tried to scream, but no sound came out. She backed away, her hands protectively covering her belly. The creature that was once Mama Iyabo advanced, its long fingers reaching out towards Aduni. "Don't be afraid, my dear," it hissed. "I'm here to collect what's mine." Suddenly, Aduni understood the terrible truth. The child growing inside her wasn't a miracle. It was a monstrous bargain she had unwittingly struck. In her desperation for a child, she had invited something dark and ancient into her life. As another contraction ripped through her body, Aduni knew she had to escape. She feigned another pain, doubling over, then suddenly bolted for the door. She ran into the dark streets of Surulere, her bare feet slapping against the pavement. The creature pursued her, its inhuman speed allowing it to easily keep pace. Aduni's lungs burned as she ran, one hand on her belly, the other reaching out for help from passers-by, who seemed oblivious to her plight. Just when she thought all hope was lost, Aduni spotted a church ahead. The doors were open, warm light spilling out onto the street. With a final burst of energy, she sprinted towards the sanctuary. As she crossed the threshold, she heard an inhuman shriek behind her. The creature that was Mama Iyabo stood at the edge of the church property, unable to enter the holy ground. Inside, Aduni collapsed into the arms of a startled priest. "Help me," she gasped. "It's coming." The next few hours passed in a blur of pain and fear. The priest and a few parishioners who had been attending a late-night vigil helped Aduni through her labor. As dawn broke, the first cries of a newborn filled the church, but Aduni's relief was short-lived. The baby in the priest's arms was unlike anything she had ever seen. Its skin was a mottled gray, its eyes an unnatural yellow, and when it opened its mouth to cry, Aduni saw the same sharp teeth that had filled Mama Iyabo's monstrous maw. "What have I done?" Aduni whispered, tears streaming down her face. The priest, his face pale with shock, quickly wrapped the infant in a blanket. "This child, it's not of this world," he said, his voice shaking. As if in response to his words, the baby began to change. Its limbs elongated, its features twisted into something inhuman. The priest dropped the bundle, backing away. "Can it be stopped?" Aduni asked, her voice barely a whisper. The old man nodded slowly. "There is a way, but it will not be easy. You must find the creature's Iyi Uwa, the stone that ties it to this world. Destroy that, and you destroy the Ogbanje." "But how can I find it?" Aduni asked, desperation creeping into her voice. Baba Ogundimu handed her a small pouch filled with herbs and bones. "This will guide you, but be warned. The Ogbanje will sense what you're doing. It will try to stop you." Armed with this knowledge, Aduni began her hunt. She wandered the streets of Lagos, following the pull of Baba Ogundimu's charm. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. The creature remained elusive, always one step ahead. Reports of missing children and mysterious deaths followed in Aduni's wake. Each time she got close, she would find only the aftermath of the creature's feeding. The guilt weighed heavily on her, knowing that each victim was a result of her misguided desire for a child. Finally, after nearly a year of searching, Aduni tracked the creature to an abandoned building in the heart of Lagos Island. As she approached, she could hear the sound of childish laughter echoing from within. Steeling herself, Aduni entered the decrepit structure. The charm in her pocket grew warm, pulling her towards an upper floor. As she climbed the creaking stairs, the laughter grew louder. She found the creature in what must have once been a grand ballroom. It had grown, now appearing as a teenager, but its yellow eyes and sharp teeth betrayed its true nature. Around it lay the bodies of its latest victims, street children lured by the promise of food and shelter. "Hello, Mama," the creature said, its voice a mocking parody of affection. "Have you come to join our little family?" Aduni's hand closed around the charm in her pocket. She could feel the pull of the Iyi Uwa, knew it must be close. "No," she said, her voice stronger than she felt. "I've come to end this." The creature's face twisted in rage. It lunged at Aduni with inhuman speed, but she was ready. She dove to the side, her old bones protesting the movement. Her hand shot out, grabbing at a glinting object half buried in the rubble. As her fingers closed around the small, smooth stone, the creature let out an unearthly howl. "No!" it shrieked. "You can't!" But Aduni could, and she did. With all her strength, she smashed the stone against the concrete floor. It shattered with a sound like breaking glass, releasing a blinding flash of light. When Aduni's vision cleared, the creature was gone. In its place was a small, wrinkled infant, wailing weakly. For a moment, Aduni's heart leapt. Was this her chance to have the child she had always wanted? But as she watched, the infant's cries grew fainter. Its skin began to shrivel, aging rapidly. Within minutes, it had withered away to dust, leaving nothing behind but a faint, acrid smell. Aduni sank to her knees, tears streaming down her face. It was over. The nightmare she had unleashed on the world was finally at an end. In the days that followed, Aduni worked tirelessly to make amends. She used what little savings she had to set up a foundation for street children, providing them with food, shelter, and education. It wasn't much, but it was a start, a way to balance the scales for the lives that had been lost because of her actions. As for Mama Iyabo, she was never seen again. The flat next to Aduni's remained empty, a silent reminder of the dangers of wanting something too much. Aduni lived out the rest of her days alone, but not lonely. She found purpose in her work with the children, in being the mother figure that so many of them needed. And if sometimes, late at night, she thought she heard the cry of an infant in the distance, she would simply close her eyes and remind herself that some dreams are better left unfulfilled. For in the end, Aduni had learned the hardest lesson of all, that the love of a child, no matter how desperately wanted, should never come at the cost of one's humanity. And in Lagos, as in much of Nigeria, the whispered warnings of spirit children and the dangers of dealing with forces beyond our understanding took on a new, terrifying significance. The tale of Aduni and her monstrous offspring became a cautionary story, passed down through generations. It served as a reminder that in the face of desperation, one must be careful what they wish for, because sometimes the price of a miracle is far too high to pay.